Hello, Third Block, and welcome to the last segment of your reading homework. Last segment of your reading homework is pages 134 to 138. So I'm going to start reading right now. Why are you standing here? Can't you see I've got a tray? Look, there was Kopchik with another tray. They were arguing, he said with a laugh, and I grabbed it. Kopchik will do well. Give him another 3 years. He has still to grow up, and he'll become nothing less than a bread cutter. He's fated for it. Pavel told him to hand over the second of the trays to Yermolov, a hefty Siberian who was serving a 10-year stretch like Shukov for being caught by the Germans, then sent him to keep an eye on any table where the men might be finishing. Shukov put his tray down and waited. 104th, announced Pavel at the counter. In all, there were 5 of these counters, three for serving regular food, one for Zeks on special diets, ulcer victims, and bookkeeping personnel as a favor, and one for the return of dirty dishes. That's where the dish lickers gathered, sparring with one another. The counters were low, about waist level. The cooks themselves were out of sight, only their hands and the ladles could be seen. The cook's hands were white and well cared for, but huge and hairy, a boxer's hands, not a cook's. He took a pencil and made a note on the wall. He kept his list there. 104th, 24 portions. Pantalev slopped into the mess hall, nothing with him, the son of a blank. The cook took an enormous ladle and stirred, stirred, stirred. The soup kettle had just been refilled almost up to the brim, and steam poured from it. Replacing the huge ladle with a smaller one, he began serving the stew in 20-ounce portions. He didn't go deep. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of the bowls had been filled, while the stuff from the bottom of the kettle hadn't yet settled after the stirring, and some were duds, nothing but soup. Shukov made a mental note of which was which. He put 10 bowls on his tray and carried them off. Kopchik waved from the second row of posts. Over here, Ivan Denisovich, over here. No horsing around with bowls of stew. Shukov was careful not to stumble. He kept his throat busy, too. Hey, you, H920, gentle uncle, out of my way, my boy. It was hard enough in a crowd like this to carry a single bowl without slopping it. He was carrying 10. Just the same, he put the tray down safely on the end of the table that Kopchik had cleared. No splashes. He managed to maneuver the tray so that the 2 bowls with the thickest stew were just opposite the place he was about to sit down in. Yermolov brought another 10 bowls. Kopchik ran off and came back with Pavlo, the last 4 in their hands. Kilgas brought the bread tray. Tonight they were being fed in accordance with the work they had done. Some got 6 ounces, some 9, and Shukov 12. He took a piece with a crust for himself and 6 ounces from the middle of the loaf for Cesar. Now from all over the mess hall, Shukov's squad began streaming up to collect their supper and eat it where they could. As he handed out the bowls, there were 2 things he had to take care of. He had to remember whom he served, and he had to watch out for the tray and for his own corner of it. He put his spoon into a bowl, one of the thick ones, reserved that meant. Fetikov was among the first to arrive, but he soon walked off, figuring there was nothing to be scrounged that particular evening. Better to wander around the mess hunting for leftovers. If someone didn't finish a stew and pushes his bowl back, there are always people hustling to pounce on it like vultures. Shukov counted the portions with Pavlo. Correct, apparently. He pushed across a bowl for Turin, one of the thick ones, and Pavlo poured his stew into a narrow German mess tin with a lid. You could carry it under your coat, close to your chest. The empty trays were handed in. Pavel, excuse me. Pavel sat there with his double helping, Shukov with his 2 bowls, and now they had nothing more to say to one another. The sacred moments had come. Shukov took off his hat and laid it on his knees. He tasted one bowl, he tasted the other. Not bad. There was some fish in it. Generally, the evening stew was much thinner at breakfast. If they're to work, prisoners must be fed in the morning. In the evening, they'll go to sleep anyway. He dug in. First, he drank the broth, drank, and drank. As it went down, filling his whole body with warmth, all his guts began to flutter inside him at their meeting with that stew. Good. There it comes, that brief moment for which a Zek lives. And now Shukov complained about nothing, neither about the length of his stretch, nor about the length of the day, nor about their swiping another Sunday. This was all he thought about now. We'll survive. We'll stake it out, God willing, till it's over. He drained the hot soup from both bowls and then tipped what was left in the second into the first, scraping it clean with his spoon. That set his mind at ease. Now he didn't have to think about the second and keep an eye or hand on it. Now that he could look freely, he glanced at his neighbor's bowls. The one on his left was little more than water, the dirty snakes, the tricks they played, and on their fellow Zeks. He began to eat the cabbage with what was left of the soup. A bowl had found its way into one of the bowls of Cesar's, a medium-sized spud, frostbitten, hard, and sweetish. There wasn't much fish, just a few stray bits of bare backbone, but you must chew every bone, every fin to suck the juice out of them, for the juice is healthy. It takes time, of course, but he was in no hurry to go anywhere today. Today was a red letter day for him. 2 helpings for dinner, 2 helpings for supper. Everything else could wait, except maybe that visit to the let for tobacco. None might be left in the morning. He ate his supper without bread, a double helping, and bread that was going too far. The bread would do for tomorrow. The belly is a demon. It doesn't remember how well you treated it yesterday. It'll cry out for more tomorrow. He ate up his stew without taking much interest in what was happening around him. No need for that. He wasn't on the lookout for extras. He was eating his own lawful portions. All the same, he noticed that when the fellow opposite got up, a tall old man, U81, sat down in his place. Shukov knew he was in the 64th and had heard, while waiting in the parcels line, that the 64th had been sent to the Socialist Way of Life settlement that day instead of 104th, and had spent the whole time without a chance of getting warm, putting up barbed wire, building their own zone. He'd been told that this old man had spent years without number in camps and prisons, and that he hadn't benefited from a single amnesty. Whenever one 10-year stretch had run out, they shoved another onto him right away. Now Shukov looked closely at the man. He held himself straight. The other Zeks sat all hunched up and looked as if he had put something extra on the bench to sit on. There was nothing left to crop on his head. His hair had dropped out long since, the results of high living, no doubt. His eyes didn't dart after everything going on in the mess hall. He kept them fixed in an unseeing gaze at some spot over Shukov's head. His worn wooden spoon dipped rhythmically into the thin stew. Instead of lowering his head to the bowl like everybody else, he raised the spoon high to his lips. He had lost all his teeth and chewed his bread with iron gums. All life had been drained out of his face, but had been left, not sickly or feeble, but hard and dark like a carved stone. And by his hands, big and cracked and blackened, you could see that he'd had little opportunity of doing soft jobs. But he wasn't going to give in. Oh no. He wasn't going to put his 9 ounces on the dirty, bespattered table. He'd put it on a well-washed bit of rag. However, he couldn't go on watching the old man. He had other things to do. He finished his supper, licked his spoon clean, and put it in his boot. He pulled his hat over his eyes, got up, picked up his bread and scissors, and went out. Another porch led from the mess hall. 2 more orderlies stood there. They had nothing to do except unhook the door and let the people through and slip the hook on again. Shukov came out with a full belly. He felt pleased with himself and decided that although it was close to curfew, he'd run over to the let all the same. Instead of taking the bread to his barracks, he strode to barracks 7. The moon was high, clean and white, as if chiseled out of the sky. It was clear up there that there were some stars out, the brightest of them, but he had even less time for stargazing than for watching people in the mess hall. One thing he realized, the frost was no milder. One of the civilians had said that this had been passed on, that it was likely to drop to 25 degrees in the night and as low as 40 degrees toward morning. From far away in the settlement, he heard the drone of a tractor. From the direction of the main thoroughfare, an excavator squealed shrilly, and creak, creak went every pair of boots in which people walked or ran about the camp. There was no wind. He meant to buy tobacco at the price he'd paid before, 1 ruble, a glassful, though outside that amount would cost 3 times as much, and for some cuts even more. In forced labor camps, all prices were local. It was quite different from anywhere else because you couldn't save money if you had any at all, for it was very hard to come by. All right, guys, that ends your 3rd section. God bless you. Don't forget your 3 annotations. And don't forget you have a reading quiz tomorrow. God bless you.